Hey everybody, Felix here from InventBox, where the solution is right around the corner. And in this tutorial, we are going to go ahead and officially get a domain name for our website. I'm going to show you how to do that for free. And I want to take a closer look at the process again of how this name resolution with the addresses works. So if you recall, we talked about this before, how there's this big process right over here where it goes down these name servers to figure out how the domain corresponds to the proper address. And that lets your computer go to the correct web server. This process is called domain name resolution, and we use something called DNS, domain name servers, or domain name system. And I want to take a closer look at this step right here. So this, we're starting out with a domain name, and of course your computer doesn't know what it means. And it goes through a long list of name servers until it finally ends up at what's called the registrar DNS. That is, the registrar is where you purchased your name from, whether it's squid.com or google.com, whatever. You buy that at a place called a registrar. And they just have the authority to decide who owns what domains. These are some examples of registrars. We have Freenom, GoDaddy, Namecheap, and there are hundreds of other registrars that you can choose from. But these are some of the main ones. And we're going to be using Freenom because they will actually let you get domains for free. Now, I want to just provide a warning here. Even though we're using Freenom, because it has free domains, they are kind of flagged as less useful or less significant because they're free, and so the search engines don't really like these. So if you want a really official website that's going to get good rankings on search engines, you're going to want to go with one of the paid domains. But we're going to use the free one now because we want to try to keep this thing 100% free as long as possible. So that is the first significant destination that this trace stops at. And you can actually configure the DNS server or the name server at your registrar because you own your website. You can tell it what IP address to correspond with. And what we're going to do is hook up our normal DNS to a dynamic DNS server called Duct DNS. Basically, we need this because your computer, your web server, has an IP address that is not static. It's dynamic. It can change from time to time. And if your web server's IP address changes, then if you have it just typed in and saved into your registrar DNS, then when people try to go to your website, it'll give them an outdated IP address and they won't be able to get there. So if you're not paying for a static IP address that never changes, then you need to use something called dynamic DNS. All of that means is your server keeps telling Duct DNS, say every 5 minutes, it keeps sending it its new IP address so that Duct DNS always has the up-to-date address of your server. And so by pointing the main DNS from your registrar to Duct DNS, when people type in your website, it will always get pumped through and get the updated address so that they can talk to your website reliably. All right, with all that big picture being said, let's dive into Freenom. Now, as I mentioned before, Freenom is great for testing, but if you want an actual full-scale website, then I highly recommend not using Freenom and using one of the bigger registrars like Namecheap or GoDaddy or one of those. So on Freenom, what we need to do first is sign in. And if you have an account, whoops, I'm going to use the InventBox account. So if you have an account, then it is really handy. You can just log in, and if you don't have an account, it actually will create one for you just with this social sign-in. So we can do this. And I've actually never created an account before with InventBox on Freenom, but as you can see, all I had to do was log into my Google and it just did it for me. Now, come over to Services and hit Register a Domain. And you can type what you want. So I'm going to look for Squid. And these are all of the top-level domains that you can get. Here, of course, are the normal ones. And again, if you're going to pay for it, I highly recommend going to another company. But these 5 are the free ones. And it looks like 4 of them are taken, but there still is squid.ml. So let's get that one and move to the checkout. Here you can select how long you want it for. The max they'll give it to you for free is 12 months. And so then you just fill out this information here and agree, and you can complete the order. Okay, and we've got an order confirmation number. So we can head over to up here in Services, go to My Domains now, and you'll see the domain that you got. It tells you when it expires, and whenever it gets close to that deadline, they'll email you, and you can come up here to Renew Domains and renew it there. We want to click on this little Manage Domain gear. And this will take us to a place where we can manage the registrar DNS. So what we need to do is create the associations for squid.ml and give them the target IP address that corresponds to our website. But remember from our diagram that we're using an intermediate step of duct DNS. So before we can proceed finishing with the registrar DNS, we need to set up our duct DNS. So we'll go to duckdns.org. They've got this cute little duck here. And we'll just head over to Install, and they've got instructions for various operating systems. If you want a Linux cron job, that's what I'm going to be using. Or they have Windows Graphical User Interface, if you're running a Windows system, they have OS X as well. Or you can install the dynamic DNS client, which basically the DDNS client is this that makes your server keep sending its current IP address to DuckDNS. That's what this piece of software is. And in order to officially set this up, we do need to sign in. So we will go in with the invent box. And again, you don't have to create an account because it uses that social sign-in, which is super handy. And we need to create a subdomain. So that means it will be inventbox.duckdns.org. So this will be essentially a domain that we can use. It's kind of an ugly domain. It has somebody else's name in it, but nobody's actually going to see this inventbox.duckdns.org. That is what we're going to use as the link right here. So we'll add that domain. And it's already registering this as my IP address. And if you want to verify that, it's really easy. You can just type IP into Google and it gives you your public IP address. So this is the address that your house, or if you're at a library, that your library or wherever your network is, this is the address that the rest of the world sees it as. And they automatically picked it up because they can see our address. And with that set up, we can head back over to the Install tab and choose the version that you want. If you want to install it directly into your router and bypass a specific computer, that's fine too. That might even be a little bit more reliable, but I'm just going to do a Linux cron and pick your domain that we just set up. And now they're just going to walk you through. So go ahead and follow all of these steps for whichever version that you're doing. All right, so I have set mine up, and now what we essentially have is a program that runs every 5 minutes that sends our current public IP address, which is the one that the internet sees us as. It sends that to DuckDNS, and that is now associated with the domain that we created, which would be inventbox.duckdns.org. Now that we have that, which always points to our web server, we can associate our real domain with that. And without going into too much detail, if you use, so this first field is for the subdomain, which would be whatever comes in front of your top level domain. That would be maybe shop.squid.ml or blog.squid.ml. You would put that here, or www.squid.ml. So for the regular plain squid.ml, you leave this blank. The A record type means that it is going to just create a link, essentially, and then you would put for target the IP address that you want. But we're not putting in an IP address, although we could. We're going to put instead the DuckDNS name server. So we need to choose record type Cname, which is kind of like an alias, just an alternate name. We'll leave this blank for just regular squid.ml, and we'll put eventbox.duckdns.org. And we want to add another record probably for www.squid.ml, and we'll just do the same thing. Okay. And we'll save those changes. And now what we have is we have now linked our computer. When it goes through the DNS resolution process, it goes to Freenom, finds out that we own squid.ml, and the DNS sends it to DuckDNS, which always points to this web server's address. The only thing that remains then, in order to get our computer access so that it can go through this whole loop of the internet to get to the web server, is we need to make sure that the web server is completely accessible from the outside world, and that is going to involve some configurations on our router. So to access your router, you are going to need to open a command line, and usually you can guess your router, but as a fail-safe, this is the way to check. You can, on Linux, type ifconfig. If you're on Windows, open the CMD and type ipconfig, and look for the spot that says, it'll say like gateway, and if it doesn't say gateway anywhere, sometimes it does not, that's okay. What you're going to do is find your IP address, and you're going to drop off, take whatever the last number is, ignore it, and replace it with a 1. So my gateway is 192.168.1.1. And I can actually access my gateway by just typing that IP address into my browser. And you can see now I'm at my router's login page. Now, in my case, I actually have a much more complicated router and network setup than most people. So I need to go to a different router that I have, but you're going to go with whichever one your gateway says in here, or by dropping this number and putting a 1 there. And here is my router for the network. And in here, we need to do something called port forwarding, which is spelled like this, port forwarding. This is where it breaks down, and it's very different depending on what brand router you have. In my case, it took me a little bit of research. I just had to Google it, and I found out that it's under virtual servers. So it's going to have us log in first. All right, and here we see a port forwarding chart. Now, essentially how this works is you have the inbound port range. So from port 80 to 80, in other words, just port 80, if somebody makes a request from the outside world into our router or our network on port 80, then the router redirects that person or connects them to computer on the network with this address, and then this corresponding port range. And like I said before, port 80 is used for HTTP requests or regular web requests, and then port 443 is used for HTTP secure. And I currently have a web server on this network, so I'm just going to actually change this to the IP address of my next router. But here's where you want to plug in the IP address that your web server has, so that when somebody comes in, they follow through this whole big loop, and then it comes into your network that has your web server on it, and your network needs to know which computer handles web requests. This is where you do that. So I'm going to change mine. I'll just put both of them on there for now. And then apply. And you have to wait for your router to reset. And now we should be able to access our new website. Okay, and once again, we've got this default Apache page, but the cool thing is, this time, we are doing this through the internet, and it's going all the way through the official DNS system, all the way up to the root servers, and coming down, looping back, and finding our web server. However, this isn't the page we want, but that actually is good, because when we defined our virtual host configuration in Apache, we put in, or I put in, squid.com, but we actually got squid.ml. So we need to go in and modify that virtual host to change that. If you are on Linux, then we do that in the etc Apache 2 sites available and squid.conf. If you are on Windows, then remember you'll go down here to the right and click on your WAMP icon, go up to Apache, and then the httpd vhosts.conf file. And we just need to change this to .ml. And remember, we actually defined the www.squid.ml over on our DNS for the registrar. Go ahead and save that, and remember, we need to restart Apache anytime we make a change to the conf file. And now let's try reloading this. And it's still not loading the page we want, so I'm going to reboot the computer. This computer is the web server. All right, so I've rebooted, and let's try it out again. Squid.ml, and sure enough, there is our website, and that's going all the way through the internet and back to our web server. If you've done all this and it still shows a different page than this, what you may need to do is hold down your Shift key on your keyboard and click the reset button while you're holding it, and that'll do a hard refresh of the page. And you can also try clearing out your browser's cache, which it's in different places in different browsers, but this cache is what you want to clear out. Okay, well, it's been a bit of a long ride for this video connecting our new domain to the web server, but everything is now working as we wish. So technically you could stop here, but I'm going to have a couple more videos about ways that you can improve this, such as adding HTTPS, the secure element, to your website.